Hello everyone, welcome to this very special spotlight event on girls' education. My name is Deborah Foy and I'm the Executive Director of Opportunity International. Before we begin, I wanted to personally thank you for your incredible support of our Waymaker campaign, which concluded at the end of last year and raised an amazing $101 million towards our efforts. It's enabled us to do so many things, and in particular to scale our education finance programme so that more children can go to high quality schools. I've worked for Opportunity International now for over 20 years, and almost every client that I've been privileged to meet on the journey has told me that they invest any extra income they're able to make in their children's education. They strive to ensure their children can attend school for as long as possible. We all know that education helps to eradicate poverty and hunger. It gives people the chance for a better life. And while there can be no dispute about the benefits of education, what I think is really so important to emphasise is that nothing can be more important than girls' education. Educating a girl, quite literally, has the power to transform lives and communities. It's also key for the world to deliver on the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, whether that's economic growth, addressing climate change, or achieving clean water and sanitation. And that's why a global development priority is ensuring that all girls and young women receive a quality education. It's also a priority for us here at Opportunity International. We've made addressing gender disparities in education one of our key focus areas over the next 3 years. And with that in mind, it's my pleasure to introduce some of my colleagues who are really core at this work. First, we'll be joined by Andrew McCusker, our Head of Education Finance. Andrew will help set the stage and will give an overview of what learning poverty is and why it's disproportionately impacting girls. We'll talk a little bit about the big issues and what role opportunity can play in helping to address some of the challenges. After Andrew, we'll hear from Anne Njine, one of Opportunity's senior education specialists. Anne has over 15 years' experience within the education sector in Kenya. She's really passionate about ensuring that all children have the opportunity to have a quality education. Anne will talk a bit more specifically about our approach to providing some of the solutions that Andrew will highlight and some examples of changes that we're seeing. So without further ado, let's get started. Andrew, perhaps you could share with us what's causing this huge disparity in education. What is it that determines whether or not a girl can access and complete her education?
Sure, happy to, and thanks for the introduction, Deborah. Maybe what I'll do is kick off with a bit of a positive note, in that we're doing a whole lot better as an industry of getting girls into the classroom than we were just a few decades ago. Going back to the year 2000, when the Millennium Development Goals were established, at that stage there were about 205 million school-age girls that were sitting outside of a classroom, which was about 54%. Today, that number's closer to 132 million. Again, a little over 50%, but well down on where we were. Each year in the Education Finance Program, we produce a report called The State of the Affordable Non-State School Sector, which explores the demand and the importance of non-state schools in closing the education gap for students around the world. Late last year, we published the 4th edition of this report. And in there, we spoke a little bit about the returns to education being very high in low-income markets. But we know that they're even more so for girls across the region of sub-Saharan Africa. We know that for every additional year that we can keep a girl in school, that their lifetime income is going to increase by 15% per year. And that's for every additional year that we can keep them in school. And so obviously the returns to education for this demographic and batch of students are pretty important, not just for changing their life income, but also the trajectory of the girl over her life. The thing is, we know the importance of educating girls, as you spoke about a little bit earlier, Deborah, but we're still struggling as a society to keep girls in school. And now there's a number of different reasons across communities, countries and regions, but typically they include poverty rates, cultural norm and traditions, child marriage, early pregnancy, a lack of access to schools, gender-based violence, inadequate sanitation facilities, and other reasons. It's these high dropout rates that are a significant driver of the low levels of learning outcomes that we're seeing. And really, we're seeing three key big issues across the board in the schools that we work with. The first one being the high dropout rates. So across sub-Saharan Africa, about 65% of girls complete primary school, which is roughly 7th grade in US schooling. The thing is, we lose a number of those girls through secondary, and right now only have about 38% of girls that are going on to complete secondary school. It's this significant dropout rate that's a key driver of the lower educational attainment across the region and ultimately has an impact on the future income generation of the girls and their human development outcomes. The second key challenge that we're seeing across our program is challenges with female school leaders accessing finance. In some markets, female school proprietors are unable to access finance in order to grow their schools or upgrade their facilities. And while the drivers of this differ by region, sometimes it's societal barriers around property ownership within the household that will preclude a female school proprietor from starting a business or borrowing to finance the expansion of her school. And thirdly, on parent and community perceptions on the value of education for girls. And so despite the pretty strong evidence base on the strong returns to education for girls, at times we see households deprioritizing the education of girls when resources are limited. And so family and community engagement is a pretty important step that we need to take to improve this. As Deborah mentioned, across the Education Finance Program, we're working to integrate the topic of gender across all of our areas of operation. That really means improving gender outcomes for students in both educational access and attainment, for parents, gender equity for school leaders, and also for teachers. For example, on the finance side of our program, we're working with our financial institution partners to reduce some of those barriers for females to be able to access finance, which is particularly prevalent in East Africa. On the education quality side, we're incorporating gender-responsive pedagogy training into our education quality program curriculum, which is effectively improving the skills of teachers to conduct lessons that optimise outcomes and understand and reflect the different ways that students of different genders learn. Like this work and all of the work that we do in the Education Finance Program, it's dependent on the availability of grant funding from our supporters, like many of you on the call today. Over the next 3 years, we're expecting to reach an additional 8 million children through our interventions. And in order to do that, are looking to raise an additional $22 million over this period. This work will go to fund the increase in quality education for more children and in particular for girls. Perhaps, Deborah, I'll hand it back to you at this point.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrea. I think that really sets the stage for just why this work is so important. Next, Anne, I'd love to turn it over to you. Perhaps you could share with us what we can do to create an inclusive environment for girls. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Deborah. I'll share a story of an amazing school leader. Her name is Rose Ngure. She's a proprietor and director of a school in Nairobi called New Purpose Shekinah Glory Education Center, which is a low-cost private school in Nairobi. Rose began her school back in the year 2000 with the aim of providing a decent education for girls and boys in her community. And by the time we met Rose, she had run her school for 19 years, but sadly, her school was still the same as she began. It had some semi-permanent structures made of corrugated iron, which by then was in bad shape. And but this did not stop Rose. She still had a big dream of upgrading her school. But at the time, it seemed impossible because she was unable to access a loan that would help her cover the costs of the development that she needed to upgrade her school. And she had visited several banks, but to no avail. By this time, her student population was very low. Her fee collection was inconsistent. And this only translated to more constraints for her that limited her to make the changes she needed to upgrade the school. However, she's a very passionate lady, and she would always make sure that she's providing a safe learning environment for all girls and boys in her school. But through her efforts, she began to notice a pattern where girls were often absent from school, especially girls in upper primary. And as she continued to follow up, she also realized that almost half of the girls who had sat for their end of primary examinations, they did not transition to secondary school for various reasons. And that is how Rose began to work extra hard by trying to ensure that the girls were placed in high school. And she would look for well-wishers, she would look for bursaries for them. And it was successful because she actually saw a change in that. She also ensures that girls in her school can now access sanitary products to keep them in school. But Rose did not even stop there. She also started a daycare center where mothers can now bring their infants and toddlers to ensure that the older girls, do not stay home to take care of the little ones. When Rose joined the program, she was put into a school cluster, and a cluster is a group of 4 to 12 schools within a geographical location who are trained together by opportunity, but we also encourage them to share best practices with each other along the way. From the very beginning, Rose has always attended all our meetings. She's come for all professional development trainings, and she continues to support her teachers who attend training led by opportunity. And these teachers later become mentors in their own school. Fast forward 3 years now, through the knowledge that Rose has acquired, she's made great progress. She's been able to now keep and review her financial records, and she's able to retain her teachers and staff on average about 80% yearly. And she has also doubled the number of learners in her school, which has moved from 80 back then in 2019 to 170 girls and boys today. In turn, this has now helped Rose to access a loan facility from a financial institution. And as a result, she now has a permanent school with stone-built structures, which was always her dream. These changes give school leaders a boost to run their schools efficiently, especially when they use a more holistic approach purposely to create a safe environments for learning for both girls and boys, so they can ensure that they are getting equal opportunities. Education specialists are included. We go through workshops that equip us to understand how to address inequalities that both girls and boys are facing and which affect their school life. And as we go through this, we get equipped enough so that we're able to work with school leaders and teachers through leading individual school visits, cluster meetings, and training sessions, where we take time to look at solutions that have worked before in creating equal opportunities, but we also encourage the teachers and the school leaders to come up with their own homegrown solutions in creating equal opportunities for their girls and boys, especially in times where they cite specific areas that bring bias against the girls. An example is textbook information or content in some of the subjects. The best part is that our sessions are well backed by our guide called Pathways to Excellence, which was recently updated to include a focus on gender across 18 areas that school leaders are able to address as they come up with their school development plans. We also have school leaders like Mercy Mbugwa. Mercy is the proprietor of a school called Ubora Senior School. It is a secondary school in an urban informal settlement where it is usual, almost you find that girls miss school for various reasons, such as they may be taken back to the village by their families to be married, or they stay home during their menstrual cycle if there is no basic sanitation in their school. Others are forced to, and these are probably the majority, they're forced to stay back and take care of their younger siblings as their parents go out to look for jobs. Mercy sadly reminds us that these are the inequalities our girls are still facing to this day. And that is why she actually quit her well-paying job to start Ubora. And Ubora means quality. And that demonstrates right up front what she's trying to accomplish with her school. In the quest of wanting to bring change, in 2018, she received reports on girls who were either exposed to abuse, were abused, or had also dropped out of school. But she was successful. She was actually successful in rescuing about 8 girls by providing a home for them in the school by converting a room to a dormitory, and she ensured that all their basic needs were met. Since then, Mercy has rescued 20 girls who have all achieved a high school certificate, and several are now pursuing further education, with 4 who have gone to university to pursue their bachelor's. Mercy believes in the quote and always challenges us to believe that when you educate a girl, you educate the nation. Now, she's working with her Parents-Teacher Association on parent engagement and involvement so that parents can understand that it is important to educate their girls. She's also raising awareness within her school by ensuring that she trains all her staff, not just the teachers, but all her staff on similar issues, while actively working with their community to ensure that they break the bias so as to ensure that both girls and boys in that community are getting equal opportunities. Rose and Mercy show an example of the passion that our school leaders across our global program have to make a difference in their communities, which we all believe that through a ripple effect will change the future of both our girls and boys, where they will thrive in any path that they will choose to take, and also within their community, their countries, or in any part of this world. So through all that, we can see a big difference as the school leaders are sharing with us. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Anne, for sharing some of the ways that we're championing creative and innovative solutions to support all children, but especially girls, to reach their full potential. And I have to say, you talked about the passion of your school leaders, but I can see your passion for educating girls as well really shining through. It occurred to me as you were talking that I'm based in Oxford in the UK, and it's only been 100 years since women here were given the right to earn a degree from the University of Oxford. And I mention that just as a small example of the long and quite difficult journey towards education equality that even women here in the UK have struggled with. In my opening comments, I touched on the importance of girls' education for the Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, educating girls is the only road to achieving these global goals. So on that note, my thanks to both of you, Andrew and Anne, for sharing the work of Opportunity International to advance girls' education. And thank you to all of you who are watching this recording for your amazing support for this critical work. Thank you.